What's up guys, Cloudie here, checking in from the America server, and this video is gonna be about a topic that I've often seen you guys ask about, be that in my YouTube comments or on Facebook or any other channel, and that's namely which or how to pick a tank, which tank to pick, and how to gear them once you have picked your tank. So now we're gonna look into tanks and all there is to know about them, mostly about their gearing. That's always the first thing you need to consider is what you will be fighting, which boss or which kind of monsters, and what you are bringing along. Because you want to have a tank that will either buff your own team's damage, so provide magic damage if you are a magical team, or decrease the boss's defense, or increase your survival chances, or one or the other way, or just not die to the boss, because some bosses can be really deadly. Or maybe they have a cleanse or an extra mechanic. So there isn't really one all kind of generalist type of tank. You always bring the one that is best for your team and the content. And this goes somewhat for the gear as well, because you need to adjust your items based on what you will be facing most of the time. There are times when you are facing mixed damage, for instance, where the boss has both magic and physical, and you can't really just focus on one, so you have to like get a balance. But there are also bosses that only do physical damage and only do magical damage, so this is the first things that you will need to consider, and then pick your items accordingly. And this is my Philips gear, and also I bring this to Xanadus most of the time, also usually with a ring, and this is fairly balanced. Now let's just check which stats we have, because these are the important stats for tanking. Now obviously HP, the more HP you have, the more damage you can take. That's always a good thing to have, but of course having more damage than you can counter with healing is not necessarily too good, so you kind of have to keep a balance between your defenses and your health. Especially there are contents where you can't actually heal, or where you have very limited healing, so having too much health versus too little healing, too little defense is not good. But HP generally is a good stat. You should always try to get more of it. So tanks will usually very like their unique treasure, because it increases their health. As you can see, my Philip only has like 0-star unique treasures, but that's what he has. Now said, that's the main stat. Now the other stats that are very important are his defenses, of course. Normally you want to aim for about 70 to 90%. Because that's where soft cap starts to kick in, where you get lower results from more defense. But until that point, you can easily go for more. Now you can see that he has very high amount of physical def and a lower amount of magic defense, because Xanadus hits pretty hard with her melee attacks at the end. That's why it's made so, but in some cases actually I usually wear a ring, because that has more block in it. This one has more dodge stats actually. So that's the base, HP and defenses. You want as much HP as you can get, and at least 70k defense of the type that you are taking, but in a mixed set you can have both. The next stat that you need to look out for is block, and this is actually a bit low with this kind of gear. Let me just switch back to the one that he was wearing. It's titled MDEF, but it's not really magic. So as you can see, it has more defense or more health and a lot less physical defense, but it also has a bit more magic. And what it does have is a very balanced amount of block. Now usually the recommended amount of block is about 1k, but you can see that even though I'm at 820, this is capped at 66%. Now this is a soft cap, it means it can go higher, but as you go above 66, the amount of block chance you get from this stat will decrease. So even though you have a lot more block chance, you will not go above. And we can quickly show this if I can find, for instance, my Taily, who is here. The Taily has 1300 physical block, but even that is only 83%. So you can see that she has like 500 more block chance than my Philip has, but only like 17% more chance to block than Philip does. So the chance goes down. You get less and less out of the stat. You have to keep that in mind when you are gearing your character. But the block is generally good. By default it will decrease the amount of damage you take whenever you block by 50%. So that's really good to have. That is like the first stat you start to build on top of health and defense. Actually, it's the first thing that you usually do, that you go to around 8 to 1k block, because that will give you decent numbers. So yeah, that's something to look out for. Also, there is another stat which is a little bit misleading, or not that very informative in its name, which is the P block def and the M block def. And basically this increases the amount of damage you block when you block. So it means that from 50% you can go up with this one, for instance, it's an extra 16%. So it means that I will be blocking 66% of the damage instead of just 50% whenever this chance applies, so whenever I block. This caps, I believe it was actually at 75%, so you can't go above that, but until then it's not a bad stat to have. Sadly, this one doesn't roll on your items. You can only get it from runes, I believe. And I think unique treasures have it. I'm not quite sure if there is even an enchant. Let's just check what we have. No, this isn't even enchanted. Wow, my items aren't enchanted. What was I doing? Okay, there is an enchant, yeah. Damage reduction upon P block. So this is that stat, which we can see here, and I have some on the unique treasures. So you can get it from runes, you can get it from enchants, and you can get it on unique treasure rolls, which we have somewhere. Now, again, if you can get this on your items, one or the other way, it will help you take less damage, and it's very useful. Now, moving on, there is another stat called toughness, or in some cases this is called resistance, actually, depending on what item you are looking at. For instance, runes will call it toughness, but I think it was my Celica who has this called M and P resistance, and you have to note that this is actually the same stat. This comes through here, so this physical toughness and magical toughness comes from resistance, or the runes which are called toughness themselves. This is really nice because this is calculated after the defense stats, and it will add another set of damage reduction to you. And this really helps when you are fighting bosses that have penetration or that straight out ignore defense. In that case, stacking toughness on top of the other stats instead of, for instance, defense can be a very good idea. And we will look at one of those sets that actually has more of those instead of defense. And finally, there is physical and magical dodge, which means that if you... Oh, and yeah, you can get this up to like 650, I forgot to mention. And then we have dodge, which can also go to like 60-something%, I believe. Whenever you dodge, you do not take damage. So that's pretty nice. Usually the recommendation is that you go for like 50% dodge at least on either type of damage, or if you are fighting a mixed type of boss, then you can have both. But of course you can't just have all of this because there are just way too many stats. So when you are doing a balanced build, you kind of need to make choices like, do I try to go more over the soft cap on one stat? Do I have more health? Do I go for more toughness? And of course there are other stats. Lifesteal can be useful also. Tanks do not do too much damage, but there are situations when they cannot heal otherwise. Attack speed. Most of them, or some of them, have things that stack with their attacks, so it's good to have attack speed. Philip could use some, but he doesn't. And then there is mana recovery, like if they do not have the mana to spam their skills, then it might cost you a run or something. So these are all things that you need to take into consideration. And then there are of course the perks that you need to pick. This is, again, the tier 3 and 5 perks usually depend on what you are fighting or which character you are choosing, and often what you are fighting. And the most common perks are HP up, defense up. Monster Hunter can be useful because it reduces the damage you take. Experienced fighter is very good, and then you can play around with stuff like battle cry, which gives health to your allies, or you can gain more block chance, or you can get some attack speed if you need it, or you can even go for this one, which gives you both defense, HP, and block. So this is really up to the character and the fight that you're doing. And if you're wondering why he doesn't have any of this, this is because I was doing stage 80 of Tower of Challenge, where he needs to be doing the maximum amount of block and amp before we knock down the boss, and then I one-shot him with Crow. So that's why he doesn't have the regular tank stats. But this is not the template. I was just talking about what perks you need to choose. So these are the main stats, and this is a fairly balanced build. I said I'm using this on Xanadu. But what happens when you need to, for instance, fight another world boss? Let's just see. So this was actually my Trial of Earth setup for Celica. I was running Trial of Earth stage 7 with this, sorry. As you can see, she doesn't have too much health, but her unique weapon is very low, or unique treasure is very low, and I don't have a soul weapon, so this could be a lot higher. The main focus of this build was to have a lot of physical defense because of her Transcendence 5 skill. This helps her a lot, and I just noticed that I forgot to actually change her perks afterwards, which explains why I suck on the current world boss. Stupid me. Okay, so she doesn't have too much health, but that's okay because healing is very limited in this fight. She does have a lot of physical defense because she transfers some of that to my DPS, and she has a lot of block, 83%. Also, you can see that even though she has a 1300, it's only 83%. And she has some extra block chance, she has physical toughness a lot, and some magic toughness which comes from her unique weapon. I guess I should change that. Or is it from her unique weapon? No, it's actually from her unique treasure, yeah, which has M resistance. And some recovery. Recovery is not really needed for tanks. She could use more speed for her passive, and her mana regen is really fine. So this is a build which is very heavily focusing physical defense, because the boss hits very hard and you have very limited healing, plus some of your defense is transferred to your DPS, in my case that's Seria, so that's why the build is done so. Both the defense and the extra block, the toughness are there to keep her from dying, because yeah, there is just no healing unless you can keep knocking the boss down. Now another build or item set that I have on this one, and this is actually what I also run on Shockme, but this is Taylie's physical set, who is the bait on Trial of Earth, which means she can only have a limited amount of physical defense, like 70k, but this is countered with a lot of health, and she still has a lot of block. She has a lot of block defense, she has a lot of toughness. You can see she went up to 650 toughness, which gives her 53% reduction. And then she has some crit resistance that's not needed, some recovery, and she does have some dodge too. Now, a lot of bosses lately have very high accuracy, so dodge is a bit less effective. The reason why this is there, because I'm using it on Shockmate 2, and I found that the stages themselves can miss, so the ads before Shockmate himself can miss, so this is a fairly good set for that. It has a lot of health, it has a lot of block and toughness. It doesn't have that much defense because Shockmate himself ignores defense, but the dodge helps to stay alive more during the waves, because I have seen that on auto sometimes my healers just don't heal fast enough. So this is heavily focusing on health and block and toughness, and these are the numbers. Now meanwhile I also run my Loman on Trial of Earth. He has a lot of defense, he has a lot of block, some dodge, some toughness, a lot of toughness actually, to help him stay alive. Actually this set is a little bit incomplete. It could have one more star on that orb, but I kind of finished farming for a while now, so won't be improving this anytime soon. Now, so these are the main stats. What else can you change? Well, you can change your runes, of course. Your unique weapon has rune slots. What's really worth putting here are the toughness runes and the defense rune. I should have a defense rune here, so you can see you can get 200 toughness per rune, and you can get the block defense 200 from ancient runes. So these are really good. Depending on the bosses you will be fighting, I recommend using one of these. Now for your chest, you can usually either put HP for a generalist item, or you can put one of the defense stats. Like he also has HP, but I think my Celica should have one of the defense runes. Yeah, for instance physical defense, but you can do this with magic defense too. So that's the usual option that you go for on the chest. Now this is a physical set, so it's not even upgraded on the secondary armor, but you can get either a defense and recovery. Oh, my clothes doesn't have any gear. Or you can get more mana per damage taken, or you can go one of the Vel'Khazar runes that gives either health or some other stats. But taking dodge is also, oops, wrong button, or too much clicking. You can also take, well, crit, this was an old build, so this is no longer relevant. I should have somewhere, where did I have a dodge tank? Somewhere I have dodge in one of those gears. Maybe in this one. No, this is also an old set. I have way too many items. Sometimes it's really hard to find what I want to look for. Okay, so for instance, Daily has physical dodge in her secondary armor. Depending on what content you build for, dodge is a perfectly good rune, and for this slot there aren't that many good runes that you can get. Not that many choices, unless you have some really good Vel'Khazar runes that can supplement the current build you are doing. Now, the interesting item here is whether you should pick a ring or a magic defense necklace or a bracelet that gives physical defense. And the answer to that is, again, what type of build you are going for, what type of enemy. For instance, physical defense is really good in Trial of Earth, but I had to keep Taily under the defense of Seria, because otherwise she wouldn't be targeted for the execution skill. So that's why she's using a ring instead of a physical defense item. But at the same time, Lowman, who is not there to be taking any of those hits, he can wear one of these, and then he gets a lot more physical defense. You can see he has almost twice the defense of my Taily. Again, something to keep in mind. And of course you have your orb that doesn't have any slots. You can't really change anything about it. Now, your unique weapons in most cases will only buff the damage you do, will not really help with surviving, but this is again depending on the tank that you are running. So, but in most cases the tanks do not need very high unique weapons. That's really when you are like at the final stage of min-maxing. But in some cases they do have very useful soul weapons. For instance, Lowman's soul weapon can provide continuous cleanse on your party, and that's really useful. They, however, do scale very well with their unique treasures because it increases their base HP, which is then increased by all the extra HP lines that you have on your gear. So the base HP you get from the unique treasure gets increased more and more by the lines that you have on your gear. So unique treasure is very useful for tanks. So these are kind of the choices you have. And finally, of course, you need to consider what kind of item set you want to wear. Now, there are a few choices. One very popular one and fairly easy to farm is of course the Frost Dragon one, because it gives you a 2-piece set gives you 10%, a 4-piece set gives you 10 plus 13%, so altogether 23%. This is important to note that both set bonuses apply. You get 23% maximum HP. That's quite nice. It's really good to have. It's useful when you need to survive, and surviving is an issue, then this is one of the best sets. When survival is not that much of an issue, then you can, for instance, go to Dark Legion armor, which will give crit damage to all of your allies. That's 5 plus 8, so 13% that you can get with a full set. So that's one of the other items that is good to shoot for. if you are fighting a boss that will not be killing your tank so much. So if you do not need to maximize the survival of your tank, then this is a very good set to have. But there are other options. One popular, or I wouldn't say popular, but one possibility that you can have is, if I can find her, yeah, it's on my Morad. So this is my old Vel'Khazar set, which had over 200k magic defense but very low health and a lot of block actually. So the interesting part about this that if you can get Beast of Chaos armor, that decreases the damage you take, and this is applied over before defenses, so that's quite useful. It wasn't a bad set, but of course getting Beast of Chaos gear is kind of hard to do. That's why it's only like a 2-piece set here, because I never got really good pieces for the other set. So it's an option, you can go with it, but it's not really the easiest way to go. I would probably go for Dark Legion or simply for Frost gear, because that's so much simpler to acquire, and you can use those other pieces for like fodder, for really good items, unless you are like swimming in Beast of Chaos gear, which can happen. Finally, one last item set is, I'm not even sure if I still have any pieces yet, it's like a tag gear with all stats. But yeah, if you are in early stages of the game, the first dragon I recommend farming is actually Black Dragons, because Black Dragon items can be used by your tanks, your supports, and your DPS. So you might have a set of Black Dragon items. It's the not most optimized, but it will work. So if you have good stats on a Black Dragon item, then you can use that as well, and the mana regen will help your characters to cast more skills. So that's definitely something you can use, but later on you can optimize for like Frost gear or Dark Legion gear as a tank. And that's basically it. Poison gear is not really good, fire gear is not really good, lava gear is not really good, and there are like suppression and protection gear, but that's PvP and that's a whole different beast. And of course artifacts, I have spoken about artifacts in a different video, so I would leave it to that. Okay, so that's really it, guys. That's the science, so to say, behind building a tank. Choose what team you have, choose what you will be fighting, adjust your stats accordingly. Always look for the skills, what they do. Does the boss ignore defense? Can you shred their defense? Do you need more block? Do you need anything specific? And that's how you build up your characters. But these are the main guidelines that you need to consider when you are building your characters. So yeah, I hope this was useful to you. As always, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, or even to like and subscribe if you like the video. And this has been it for now. Cloudie out. See you in the next one. Bye bye.